Today I'm joined by Rachel Watkyn. Rachel is the founder and chair of the Tiny Box Company, which is, they produce ethical and recycled high-end luxury packaging. And Rachel's also the CEO at Know the Origin, which is a sustainable mini department store. So welcome, Rachel.
Hello. Thank you
Thank
for
you for
having
joining
me.
us today.
Thank you.
So, Rachel, look, tell us a little bit more about the Tiny Box Company, but also the Know the Origin as well.
Oh, it's a long story, but in summary, I was working out in Sierra Leone in the late 90s. It was a war zone. Hindsight, I don't know what I was thinking. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
What
But
were you doing out there, if you don't mind me asking, Rachel?
really random. I was implementing a government finance system
Okay.
for the Sierra Leone government, as you do, you know.
Yeah.
Working in the Treasury building, and what hit me was the level of poverty on the ground. It was so bad. I mean, there was a full-on coup there. And when I came back to the UK, I was determined to try and do something to help people on the ground. So I set up a really early fair trade jewellery business. And it was actually my sister that said, well, what are you going to put the jewellery in? Because at the time, most of the packaging on the market was the Chinese leatherette type boxes that just kind of went against our ethos. And I said, well, that's a fair point. And I tried everywhere to get off the shelf small numbers of boxes. And back in 2007, it took me a few years to get my act together. And in 2007, you just couldn't buy them. It was you had to have them specially manufactured, 1,000 units at a time with tooling charges. And I thought, this is ridiculous, because this was the start of Etsy, not on the high street era, where everybody that was selling handmade crafting things would have the same problem. So Tiny Box was born as a complete market disruptor, selling jewellery boxes and small gift boxes online where you could buy one.
So it's amazing how these sort of things come about. And then, and we'll delve into that in a bit more detail. But before we do that, tell us a little bit more about the Know the Origin as well. So we've got a picture of that.
So Know the Origin was another accident. I'm good at business accidents. I'd seen the business. I didn't found it. It was a very bright woman called Charlotte who'd started it. She saw a gap in the market, especially after the Bangladeshi factory disasters. And she just ran into problems which I won't go into. So I ended up buying the brand and the stock to try and get it going again, or to rescue it. As it turns out, I'm not going to lie, it's a dead duck, because nobody cares about sustainability anymore.
Wow. Isn't that? It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
They only care if it's not going to cost more money. And we've seen huge floods of imports into the UK from Shein, Temu, people like that, where you can buy a t-shirt for 20p, including shipping. And people can't justify to themselves why they'd spend £80 on a pair of leggings when they can get them for a fiver.
Right. Yeah. So
it's a big problem.
Yeah. So that's something really that needs to be developed further, from either bringing the cost down, which is obviously very difficult, because the reason that these aren't sustainable is it does increase the cost, but also in terms of, well, and we won't go into this today, but also what can be done to change that view of the general public in terms of sustainability is extremely important for the future of our planet. So yeah,
I think
sorry.
I think the biggest problem is that some of the corporates, and I'm not going to name names, name and shame or anything like that, but some of the corporates have done such a good job of greenwashing,
yeah,
that people genuinely believe that what they're buying is sustainable or ethical.
yeah.
But for anyone that is genuinely interested, I would urge them to look at the cotton farmers in India and see what's really going on. 250,000 suicides to date.
250,000, did you say?
Yep.
Wow. Well,
And It's completely kept out of the UK press. As I say, I won't go into it now, but if people want to do their own research, it's well worth doing.
So just so that everybody's picked that up. So the cotton farmers in India, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So yeah, take a look at that. Great. Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for sharing that. We'll hopefully people watching this will take a look. So, okay. Look, let's go back to you and the tiny box company. So, you mentioned that this sort of, just well, it's sort of like an accident. I think you sort of explained it. So,
Yeah.
had you planned to be a business owner? Was that something, when you, I don't know, when you were at school or university, do you think, well, okay, at some point in the future, I'm going to be a business owner?
So I was a terrible student. I didn't realise at the time. I mean, I would be diagnosed with ADHD now if I was at school, without a doubt. So I had no attention span. But last week, I found a couple of old school reports. And in the school reports, you had to write your own comments. And you had to say what you wanted to do when you were growing up or when you were grown up. And on both school reports, I'd put that I wanted to have my own business.
Wow.
Yeah.
And had you forgotten that until
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just shows, doesn't it, that these things that you sometimes you set your mind to when you're younger, that actually you don't realise that actually you achieve them. That's great. So
Yeah.
So you didn't necessarily have a plan to become a business owner. It just sort of like happened. You saw this opportunity in the market where there was a gap that actually was viable, but also was a good cause as well, because you were looking to produce sort of ethical and recycled packaging.
So what's so weird is that I look back at my career,
yeah,
and everything kind of led me there.
okay.
I did go to university, put myself through uni, got a degree in business studies.
Right. Yeah.
Hated it. It was so boring. Got my first job with John Lewis doing financial accounting because I thought I wanted to be an accountant. Hated it. Then moved into sales of software, or like technical sales of software. Did training, and yeah, everything kind of led me there. I one way or another, I kind of developed the skills without knowing it.
Yeah.
To be able to run my own business, because without doubt, you need a strong financial understanding. You need to understand sales. You need to understand marketing, and somehow I'd covered it all without realizing that's what I was doing.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, and you picked up some really things there that business owners need to have sort of strengths in. So you mentioned that actually, you don't necessarily enjoy those things when you were doing them. What do you love about being a business owner?
Well, some days I don't know.
I think we all have that question occasionally.
Some days I go into work and I'm like, what am I doing here? But I'm an inventor. That is, I guess, the core me.
Okay.
I'm an inventor, problem solver. And by running your own business, you get to be an inventor. So I won't go again into detail with it, but I again accidentally invented something about 18 months ago, which is a brand new business that I'm working on, which is much, much bigger than any of the previous businesses, including the box company.
Wow.
And it was just a gap in the market. And that's what I love. I love the creative side of it.
Yeah. And look, I should highlight here, because we talked about the beginnings of the tiny box company, but that business now is a multi-million-pound business. I mean, I think I'm correct in saying, I mean, you well, I don't know how many people you employ, but it's certainly over 30, 40 people, is it?
It's normally around the 100 mark.
Yeah, 100. Okay, 100 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't go into details, but significant revenues as well. So yeah, when you're saying that this business that you've got, that you're developing at the moment, is bigger than the other businesses, I just wanted to put some scale around that for people sort of listening to this. So like from what you described there, I'd describe you as a true entrepreneur. Okay, you're the ideas, you like coming up with ideas and of things moving forward. But being being an entrepreneur, we've got certain strengths and we've got certain areas that perhaps we aren't so good at or we don't enjoy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that with the things that you're really good at, the ideas, the inventions, as you put it, but all the other things that need to be done in a business?
Do you know, it's a really interesting thing, because without doubt, you have to, by being an entrepreneur, you kind of have to accept that you're in the spotlight, but somehow it's about keeping your ego in check and saying, okay, well, I am pretty rubbish at that. I need to recognize that, and then surround yourself with people who are better than you, and make sure they're not yes men.
Yeah.
I've met some well-known business people who just surround themselves with yes people, and it's like, well, you never get a true understanding of the business or solutions. So it's not unusual for me to be in a meeting with part of my team, my close-knit team, and they will be kicking me under the table because they think I've said something inappropriate. And it's having that level of honesty and trust with people that can compensate where you fail.
Yeah.
I can't do procedures. I can't do structure. I'm terrible at it. And I say things that are inappropriate, hence why I get sore ankles.
And I think I think it's from the book the E-Myth by Michael Gerber,
Yeah.
where he refers to, you need three types of people in a business, and he refers to them as the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I think it's the managers and the technicians.
Yeah.
And what he's saying is the entrepreneur, which is the visionary sort of person coming up with all the ideas of this is how we can do that. But, and this is how he puts it in the book, is that they leave a wake of destruction behind them.
That's me.
Okay.
That's me.
And sorry, go on, yeah.
So I'll be in the office. I'll be like, oh, I've had an idea. Oh, I've had an idea. Oh, we could do this. Oh. And I actually sat in a meeting with the senior management team one day, and they were honest enough to say to me, they said, it's like you keep throwing balls at us, and the balls are coming so hard and fast, we don't know which ones we're supposed to catch, and which ones we let drop. And that, Rach, yes, you literally leave a trail of destruction with everybody running behind you trying to keep up. Wow. So now we've homegrown a CEO.
Okay.
And she's the manager, and she is the layer between me and the staff.
Yeah.
And even yesterday, her and the head of finance sat in my office, and they're going, please don't speak to the staff. Please don't talk to them. Come through us.
And I think that the key thing there is actually, yeah, that you highlighted is know your strengths, and then surround yourself by a great team of people who actually can do the things that either or both you don't enjoy, or actually you're not as good at. And yeah, if you can find the put the people around you to do that, that's what makes a winning team. So and I think, yeah, like, how Michael Gerber put it was, the entrepreneur comes up with the ideas, the managers are the ones that shape it and put it all into a structure and a plan, and right, this is how we're going to implement it. And then the technicians are the ones that then implement that structure and plan. So,
and do some sort of detaily bits that are really not my strength.
I like the way you call it, detaily bits. But and look, and you mentioned that I hope you don't mind me mentioning, but you mentioned earlier about you get the opportunity to meet some really sort of well-known investors, entrepreneurs. But so I think I'm right in saying is it about 15 years ago you were on Dragon's Den? Is it
something like that? Yeah.
15 years ago, and you were successful in getting an investment from two dragons. What was that like? What was that experience like of going through that?
So that again was another accident. Lots of accidents have happened in my career. I never applied. It was my business partner at the time that he was a well-known DJ, and he didn't want to be in the business anymore, but he didn't want to let me down. So he secretly applied to Dragon's Den. And I got a call one day when when my business partner at the time was in the office with the BBC saying, "What do you want the money for?" And do you want to come on the programme? And Robin, business partner, was mouthing across the office, "Blag it, just go with it. I'll explain afterwards." So because I'd never applied and because I had no expectations, the company'd only been trading for 6 months. I didn't know the first thing about packaging. I'm not going to lie. I just knew nothing about it. It was just seeing that gap. So when we went on the show, the first 6 months have been very successful, but I never imagined we'd get investment because we didn't fit anything. We didn't have a trading history. We had nothing patentable. I knew nothing about the industry. As far as risks were concerned, we were right up there. So yeah, no expectations. But the dragons so far have had about a 10,000% return or something crazy.
Well, I can
So-
imagine. No, you know, I do research before we have these discussions, and so yeah, people can. You know, I've watched the episode or certainly clips of it, so yeah, I know what the investment was, and yeah, I can see. Yeah, I've got an idea of, well, based on what we just talked about, that you're now 100 sort of people business. I'm sure they've had significant returns, which is which is great. It's what they do, and look, you know, it's pleasing for me that actually, you know, you got that investment, and it's enabled you to make, you know, or partly enabled you to make the company that you've got today. And because also, you know, watching that session, there was one dragon there that perhaps wasn't so enamored with the business and the business model. So it just shows that it's not for everyone.
I am pleased to say that Dragon's Den has mellowed a lot. When we were on it, it was 2008, so however many years ago that was. They were brutal, really brutal, and they wouldn't get away with it now.
Yeah.
But one dragon in particular was brutal both on and off camera. And what people don't realise is that we were in the den for 2.5 hours, and that's clipped down to 10 minutes.
Yeah. I was lucky enough actually that last year I was at a conference where Deborah Meaden was speaking, and I must say that when I watched Dragon's Den and she's on it, I didn't really warm to her on Dragon's Den. When I heard her speak in you know, at the conference, I thought she was great. Really business minded, the way she came across, and actually she said the same as what you just sort of said there, that actually the viewers don't get a true view of actually what happens, because it is about 2.5, 3 hours that's condensed down. So sorry, go on, Rachel.
What's really staggering with it is you are not allowed any paperwork at all.
Yeah.
You have to do everything from memory, and answer all the questions, all the numbers and everything. You literally are allowed no paperwork. So that's probably the most challenging part.
Yeah. And because that's sort of like a memory test as well, isn't it? Not just do you understand it, but can you remember it?
Yeah.
So Rachel, what, you know, you've you know, started your own business. You've had the involvement that we've just talked about with Dragon's Den. You've obviously had some you know, connections with, you know, 2 of the dragons. What would you say is your biggest learning since being in business?
My biggest learning has been to trust myself.
Okay.
Because, again, I won't go into details, but very troubled background, very difficult childhood. I had no confidence. And you always think that there's people out there that are far more knowledgeable than you and know so much more than you. And I've realised as I've got older that I know a lot more than I realise I do, as a lot of us in business do, but we don't trust ourselves enough to go with our knowledge.
Yeah.
And women in particular are terrible at just not believing that they have the answers, and they go to somebody else to affirm what they already know.
It's interesting that you should say that, Rachel, because as you know from our earlier conversation, I'm a business coach.
Yeah.
And when I coach people, it's not about, they already know what they need to do.
Exactly.
It's just that they don't necessarily have the confidence or the trust in themselves to actually do it. So yeah, I can absolutely echo what you say there. That's what I've seen through experience as well. So trust, one of the biggest lessons you've learned is trust yourself. Okay.
So true story. Before I went on Dragon's Den, it was probably 2 months before, I went on one of these government funded sessions with 3 business mentors to get funding ready. And I went there with my business idea, and we sat around the table, and at the end of the session, one of them looked at me, sat back and said, "I don't think you've got a unique selling point." I said, "Okay, what do I need to pivot?" And he laughed and said, "Well, if I knew that, I'd be in business and not here coaching you." Now, if I hadn't had enough confidence, then Tiny Box would never have happened. I'd never have followed through with it. And I wouldn't be making the difference that I am to the people that I employ, the greater community, the tax man. And that's a classic example. If you believe in something, you have to go with it, regardless of what experts say.
I like that. That's so true, isn't it? Yeah. Look, and I think this is the thing. It's that, yes, listen to the people around you. Surround yourself by great people, whether it's other business owners, business mentors, business coaches, whatever it may be, your team. Listen to what other people say.
Yeah.
But then make your own decision and stick to what you believe. So that's the important thing. Yeah. So great message. Thank you for sharing that. And look, Rachel, the other thing I was interested in exploring with you is your resilience. Because we often look at other business owners and sort of go, well, oh yeah, like you've created this amazing business, and I think the joke is that you always hear is how long it takes to be an overnight success.
Yeah.
But you've had some real challenges along the way in creating what you've created in your business and in your life. So what would you say to people listening about resilience?
I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is that and I'm still guilty of it now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I'm there at all, but we let ourselves be governed by fear.
Right.
Everything we do, we are fearful of. We stop ourselves doing stuff because of fear. And when something terrible happens, it's rather than just getting on and dealing with it, we allow all that fear to build up in us. So you're right. I've been through some horrific things, horrific childhood, a lot of abuse, very lost in my 20s. And then since the business, we've had fire, flood, hacks, you name it. We've had it. I've been through breast cancer twice whilst running the business, lung cancer. And it's about accepting. It's going back to the old AA adage, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Right, yeah.
The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I guess I kind of live my life by that, where if I can't change it, then I've got to accept it and live with it and deal with it in the best way I can that has the most positive impact on the people around me, so that I'm not bringing them down with me. And just try and deal with it, and then hope for a brighter future, because I think it was Dolly Parton that famously said that when it rains, there's a rainbow.
Yeah.
And it's getting through that difficult time in the most positive way, that has the most positive impact on those around you.
And is there anything in particular that you do in those sort of times, and so reminding yourself of that, of what you just sort of quoted there? But is there anything in particular that you do? Any tips that you can share that how to be resilient?
So 2020, COVID happened, and the day Boris said, send everybody home, 23rd of March, engraved in my brain.
Yeah.
the first thing I did was I sat by Zoom with the finance team and said, okay, we don't know what's going to happen. What's our cash burn rate? How long can we last? And they said, okay, well, with no income coming in and keeping everybody on the books, we can probably survive about 6 months. I was like, great. So I don't need to panic. And there was something niggling at me at home that weekend. And it suddenly dawned on me that I didn't think that they'd taken into account all the purchase orders that we'd already committed to.
Right. Okay.
And once we built that in, I said, okay, now how long can we last if we honour all of those? Okay, we've got about 2 months. And I was so adult, I sat there and cried. And it was actually my husband that said, okay, you've had your pity me party, now you've just got to get on with it. And I thought that is so true. So I guess I just allow myself a certain amount of time. Okay, allow yourself that grieving time, give yourself a deadline.
Yeah.
And then you've just got to move on and see the best way through it.
I like that. That's thank you for sharing that. That's great advice. And I'm sure a lot of business owners experience similar things, with COVID, etc. And I like what you said there. Give yourself time to grieve whatever it is, but then say, right, pick yourself up and say, right, what actions am I going to take? What do I need to do to get through this? I often use a phrase that I use in my sort of coaching as well, which is being above and below the point of power. And if we're above the point of power, we're taking ownership, accountability, and responsibility. Okay. If we're below the point of power, we're using blame, excuses, and denial. So, and it's okay occasionally to be, as you say, to give us time to be below the point of power and just have that moan and blame it on, COVID, on the government doing all the wrong things, or Boris Johnson making all the wrong decisions. But ultimately, that doesn't do any good. What then does good is picking ourselves above the point of power and saying, right, how do I take ownership for this? How do I take accountability and responsibility? What are we going to do? How are we going to pivot was the big word, and all of those sort of things. And that to me is a resilient person. So yeah, that's great. Sorry, Rachel.
I think it's also about having clear goals of where you want to go.
Yeah.
Because if you have a real clear picture of your end goal, and I'm not suggesting for a minute that you live for that, but if you have that vision, then when you do get taken off the line, it's easier to get back on track, because you're still looking at that longer picture. But on that, I saw a guy in Brighton talk. It was mind-blowing for me, because he'd sold his company for 500 million. And he said, I just want you all to know that there is no there. We're like, what does that mean? And his point was that if you only live with your goal in mind and you don't enjoy the journey, you'll get there, and then you'll realize that there's nothing there. That it was just a vision. And okay, so you've sold your company for 500 million. Now what? You thought you'd have this great reward, and yes, you've got the money, but that's not what drives people often anyway. So yeah, it's about enjoying the journey and keeping that balance.
And again, I often relate it to a sort of a car journey. You know your end destination, but on the way you hit traffic jams, roadblocks, but as long as you know your end destination, you work out, okay, well, I'll change my route to get there, or I'll do this, whatever. So yeah, a great point. Out of interest, can you remember who that business owner was that sold their business for 500,000? Was
no
500 million? Sorry.
500 million, yeah. I honestly can't. Very interesting guy.
Yeah, no, I love the reason I ask is because I love reading these stories and hearing about people and watching people and listening to people and understanding, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, what lessons they learned. So yeah, look, if you remember any time, I'll be
I'll let you know. I can find it.
That'd be great. Well, look, Rachel, there's one question that I always like to ask everybody that's kind enough to join me on these discussions, and that's this: What's the best advice that you would give to an 18-year-old you? So if you could go back to when you were 18, what would you say to yourself?
So I was literally talking about this morning with a fellow business person. I think that people in general, it doesn't matter what age, have become so lost because we're not listening to our true calling of what we want to do anymore. We're listening to Instagram, TikTok, parent pressure, peer group pressure. And the advice I would have given to my 18-year-old self is, what do you want? What do you genuinely want? Not what everybody else wants, not what you think you should be. You know, if you want to be a stay-at-home mum and that's your dream, then you do it, because everybody else judging you is judging you because they are lost as well.
Yeah.
So my advice would be, yeah, to anyone, listen to what you want and not filling everybody else's needs and roles.
Yeah, I like again. I think a great piece of advice, and it resonates with me. I've got two daughters, and one of which, well, she's 19 now. But yeah, that resonates in terms of, yeah, just do what you want to do. So great bit of advice. Thank you for sharing that. Well, Rachel, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and sharing more about, you know, your business, but also your journey as well. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been good to be here.
You're welcome.